Welcome to another edition of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career Outreach Coordinator at the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at KU.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Cheers to Careers. I'm Steve Ridinghouse, the Career and Outreach Coordinator for the KU School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Today, we are joined by J School alum Claudia Close, Assistant Director of Communications at the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Claudia.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. I know it's always an incredible time in the sports world, and I know you just kind of wrapped up your ACC basketball tournaments a couple weeks ago. So what is it like being an Assistant Director of Communications? Are you on the go all the time? Probably nonstop communications?
Yeah, come January, it is living out of a suitcase week by week, just kind of figuring out what city, what tournament, what sport I'll be watching. Kind of just taking it day by day, learning. It's all fast paced, getting to watch some good basketball, watch some gymnastics, and yeah, it's hectic, but it's fun.
Is that part of the charm of a position like that, where it's something new every day, every week? I mean, I probably can't ask you, so tell me a typical day, what a typical day is like, because there probably is no typical day in your life, is there?
No, yeah, that was definitely to working in sports in general, just knowing that it was going to be different every single day. But yeah, my week can go from Mondays, I'll have Player of the Week voting. So we'll get all the nominations in from any sports information directors, SIDs at all of the campuses. And then my staff will sit, deliberate, vote. And then sometimes they'll come out on Mondays. Other sports will come out on Tuesdays. Some might even come out on Wednesdays. So a lot of that is preparing for those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Wednesday, I'll be writing my previews, whether it's, softball notes right now or volleyball notes on Thursdays in the fall. And then getting ready for whatever games the weekend has, whether they're ranked matchups, not ranked matchups, any tournaments. So yeah, starting at March, we basically went from the women's basketball tournament in Greensboro to the men's tournament in Washington, D.C. And then I went back to Greensboro for the gymnastics championship that was this last Saturday. So it's been a month.
Now, did you always want to be in sports communications, or did that develop kind of later in your KU times? I know during your time at KU, I was looking at your profile. You did a lot, like with internships and volunteer work. I know you were a Big 12 tournament volunteer, KU football videographer. I think you did media relations for KC T-Bones, sports anchor for KGH. So did you get a sense of what you wanted to do, or were you just trying to take it all in and eventually kind of find a path that you'd go towards?
Kind of both. I know when I transferred to KU, I absolutely wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be Erin Andrews, Holly Rowe, like that was my dream. And there was actually a Kansas basketball game that I was covering for KUJH. It was my junior year, so 2016-17, and we lost. And I think it was one of the first games in Allen Fieldhouse that they had lost in like the longest time. And there was just this air over Allen Fieldhouse that like it was eerie. And it was Devontae Graham, Frank Mason. They came into the post-game press conference, and you could just tell they didn't want to be there. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to be either. But they were talking to their SID, Chris Tyson, and I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the person that they want to talk to after a bad loss, after they, trust essentially. Not that they don't trust the media, but it's a different relationship that student athletes have with an SID. And so that kind of completely changed my trajectory at the end of my junior year. So I don't want to say I panicked, but I panicked a little because I knew I only had 1 year left. But like you said, I was working in the video department for the Kansas football team, and Katie Lonergan was their communications director at the time. And I went to her and basically said, how do I become you? And she put me in touch with the comms department and KU athletics, and the rest is history.
I would have to think all those experiences at KU kind of work well with what you're doing now. I mean, you've kind of been involved in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, just knowing what it's like from the media, trying to cover it, and now working with the media, trying to help them do their job, has been incredible. Just knowing what it's like on that side, and now knowing how to help them and on my side. Just like at gymnastics, I had to let everybody else know that I'm here to make sure that the student media, the regular media, the school creative and school communications people get what they need. because I've been on that side and I know what they need and I know how they need to get it. So it's very, very helpful.
And you shared some great photos of your career, and I kind of forgot, you're part of that spring training group in Arizona, right? With the Royals, you
I
covered that.
was, yeah, that was
What was that
awesome.
experience like?
It was so cool. Looking back on it, I haven't heard of anybody else in any sort of comms department I've worked in that's been able to just go and cover spring training like that. Um, it was it was just such a cool experience getting to go and talk to these athletes that we would have never gotten the chance to talk to in any other environment. And to be able to come back and tell their stories, which is what I love to do, is just telling people stories. And it was awesome.
And you touched briefly on how you transferred to KU. Can you share with us, you didn't take the most direct route to KU. How did KU come into the picture?
So I went to the University of San Diego my freshman year. It was close to home, really small school, very similar to my high school. And like I said, I still wanted to be in journalism. And so I got there and they only had a communications department. And I got involved with the student newspaper. I got involved with their communications department at the time, which I didn't really understand what that was and what they did. And so he let me intern with them essentially. And so I was interviewing players, which is what I wanted to do. But then he had me doing participation at a football game and just circling the numbers of who went in the game. And I'm like, this is not what I want to be doing. So I went back to the newspaper, back to the TV station, and it was very, and I'm not going to talk ill on them, but there was just no real direction. There wasn't a journalism program, so there wasn't any influential people there to kind of guide us. So I kind of went back and I'm like, oh, this isn't what I want to be doing. And so I actually had a friend from Las Vegas where I grew up who was on the baseball team, and we're kind of joking around just saying, come to Kansas. And I'm sitting there going, why would I come to Kansas? I don't know anybody in Kansas. I've never been to Kansas. Like, why? And I ended up coming out for a visit, and I absolutely fell in love with the campus. The J school is exactly what I wanted. It was the perfect fit. It was the best decision I ever made, and I say that to this day.
No, that's awesome to hear. So yeah, I'm glad you found KU. I know fan engagement seems to be pretty popular in recent years. Are you involved in that in your current role? I mean, are you involved in kind of the fan experience, or is that not part of your area?
Not as much. It's actually very different from being on a campus. So at the conference level, communications is very strictly communications in that sense, which is nice. So the only really fan engagement that I've had was our gymnastics championship this past weekend. We made sure to designate sections for each school. There were only 4 schools, so it wasn't that difficult. But I was able to help relay to their SIDs and their social teams, like, hey, these are your sections. Absolutely, like, push them out so that, you can all be in the same section. But the other, like, fan engagement marketing stuff is not really anything that I'm involved with these days.
How about the last couple of years? I know a lot of college sports fans with NIL, the transfer portal. Are you involved in any of that from a communication standpoint, or is that you kind of stay away from that?
Lucky me, I get to stay away from it all. Just kind of deal with any repercussions of who transfers and who doesn't. But yeah, it definitely hasn't impacted our day-to-day quite yet, I should say. I'm sure it will in the future though.
Okay. And before you joined the ACC, you're at Davidson, and I know looking at your profile, I think you did a lot at Davidson with like social media. Was that kind of where like your social media skills came to develop, or did you already have those skills in place before you got to Davidson?
It's always a work in progress with social media. It is changing daily. And so that was part of the challenge when I was at Davidson of staying current, staying relevant. That was really right after TikTok kind of took off. So trying to figure out how to stay relevant with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, which are all very different platforms. They attract a very different audience. So it was fun while I was there. Very thankful to not have to do that on top of everything communications wise these days. But it was, yeah, the skills that I took from DePaul and graduate school, I was able to compound on them while I was at Davidson, for sure.
And with the ACC, I think you've been there like a year and a half. Does it still kind of feel kind of new and challenging for you, or do you feel like you've kind of got that rhythm, that routine down?
It definitely has its days where I'm like, I got this. And then, I keep bringing up gymnastics, but it was the first gymnastics championship we've had in 40 years, and nobody knew what we were doing going into it. So that obviously presented a ton of challenges, just kind of figuring out what we needed to do, how we were going to do it. And I think we pulled it off very well. But there's definitely those days where it's mind blowing of things that we're still learning and growing and trying to figure out day to day.
And I saw in your LinkedIn profile, you spent a year as an editorial assistant for the Society of Thoracic Surgeons in Chicago. How does that connect to sports?
That was the COVID year. So I graduated from DePaul in 2020. And I was one of those lucky ones that got to walk across my living room. And everyone went on a hiring freeze. My boss couldn't keep me on even if he wanted to, which he did, but couldn't. And I had a job lined up in Chicago at another university, but they just went on a hiring freeze. And so I kind of had to step back and rely on my journalism degree, my public relations degree, and figure out what I like to do. And I will say I was very blessed and lucky to find a job during COVID, because I know a lot of people were not able to and struggled during that time, but that was definitely my bridge that I had to get over to get back into sports.
No, well said. But there were some skills, from your J school experience that you're able to use for that job and kind of help you for the next phase.
Absolutely. There's the one thing that I honed in on was that I love to edit. I feel like there's a little grammar nerd inside of me somewhere. So I kind of just started typing in like editing roles. And while it wasn't necessarily the type of editing, because I can't understand anything from these doctors that wrote these papers from all around the world, it was, I still like to edit, and it always took me back to Lisa McClendon's editing class,
Nice.
grammar class. So that was one of my favorites when I was there. It reminded me of it every day. So it was awesome.
And we're getting close, a little less than 2 months from graduation. You touched on a lot of great things so far, but if you interacted with the KU soon to be grad, what kind of advice would you share right now? I know you've touched on a lot of different skills you developed and trying new things and bridging that gap. I mean, what should the class of 2024 be prepared for?
Oh my gosh, not to be afraid of change, not to be afraid to try different things. If there's a job that you don't get, there's plenty of jobs you're not going to get. You're going to apply to 60, 80 jobs, and you might hear back from 2 of them. And just to not let that discourage you. Everything is changing, no matter what it is. Anything in the journalism world, whether it's stratcom or journalism or video or photo, everything's changing. So to kind of embrace it, don't be afraid of it. Things aren't going to go your way, but you just kind of got to make the best of it and try and stay as positive as you can.
No, great advice, Claudia. Yeah. Hey, before you go, I always want to close with our new feature, Fast Five. So yeah,
ready for it.
Okay. So you've talked about gymnastics a few times. You're the gymnastics contact for the ACC. So what is your best gymnastics event? If you were a gymnast, what would it be?
I'd probably go for the bars.
Bars? Okay.
Yeah, bars for sure.
Okay. I noticed you were a bartender at McGee's Tavern and Grill in Chicago. What was the most popular drink for you to make? The one that you could make blindfolded?
Oh, vodka soda.
Vodka soda.
I probably made 100 of those every single night. Yeah.
So you're from Las Vegas and went to school in San Diego, and then KU, and then you were at DePaul, and now you're on the East Coast. What is your favorite region? Where do you like to live?
Oh, Midwest, 100%.
Midwest?
Oh yeah. If I can move back to Kansas or Chicago.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go back to Vegas, where's your go-to place to go?
That's so hard. There's this Mexican restaurant called Lindo Michoacan, and that's always kind of the way out stop. For me and my mom, we'll get a little margarita and some chips and queso. But with that said, In-N-Out is also, they're pretty even. It's kind of one or the other that I tell my mom I have to have both of those things before I leave town.
So do you spend much time on the Strip when you're in Vegas, or you stay away from the?
Oh, far away.
Okay, far away. Okay.
Like I was there for the Super Bowl. And
oh, nice.
Like the Chiefs were 2 miles from me, but I stayed so far away. It was, yeah, it's.
So last question. I know you've probably been involved in a few interviews and maybe you've interviewed some talent as well. What do you think is the one interview question that needs to kind of go away? The job interview question. Is there
strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's those are going to change. You could think you're great at, I used to think I was great at like remembering people's birthdays and making sure that, you know, everybody in the office had their birthday, and I literally forgot my coworkers the other day.
Okay.
So something as simple as that, like it could be your strength, it'll be your weakness tomorrow. So
Right.
I can just,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the weakness question, I always kind of cringe when that's still being asked. So it's tough.
Well, and my answer to that is always, I have a hard time saying no, but I feel like that's not a weakness because
Right. And that's
I'm just going to show up. If
response.
you need me, I'll be there.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. Hey, Claudia, I appreciate your time. Again, I know it's busy time for athletics communicators. So I always like to give a cheers. I know you got a special thing to cheers with. I think you got like
Oh,
a
yeah, I
nice...
do. It's right here.
Nice.
Allen Fieldhouse.
So you share that a lot with your Charlotte?
I do. It's where everybody can see it. Yeah.
All right. Well, cheers, Claudia. Hey, I appreciate your time, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks so much. Rock Chalk.